Hi, I'm Andrea Klim, and you are watching Turn to the Stars. Today is April 1st, 2014, and on Turn to the Stars this week, I'm going to be talking about the cycle and the patterns of the eclipses and how these cycles work, and especially talking about a little bit more about the lunar eclipse that's coming up on April 15th and the solar eclipse that is sort of like the bookend of the spring eclipses coming into 2014. So, starting out here, patterns. It's interesting because today the moon is in that constellation of Taurus, which is a very earthly type energy, and it does sort of encourage us to look at the patterns of the earthly processes and the processes of the structures that surround us. And in astrology, that is exactly what we look at, is we look at the influences of the planets as they move around us, as we move with them, and what that looks like and what that means. So eclipses. We are currently coming up on two very, especially the first one, the lunar, is what is going to be a total lunar eclipse on April 15th. And this whole pattern, or this whole theme of development with the new moon just began. And that was this past weekend on Sunday, March 30th, as the new moon in Aries was beginning a new theme of development. And it was interesting because this new theme of development is very, very important, because right in this constellation of Aries, which I have a chart to show you, which is the chart of the new moon in Aries, which was on March 30th. There it is. The new moon in Aries was bringing in a new theme of development, and this was this past Sunday, right about 4:06 p.m. here in Manchester, New Hampshire. We had this experience of this theme of new beginnings, and it was interesting because, as you can see where that red arrow is pointing up, there's the symbol for the sun, the circle with the dot, the moon, which is the crescent, and Uranus, the planet Uranus in the constellation of Aries. And Uranus, being that it was in alignment with this new moon, was telling us that it is time to pave some new paths, to experience some change this time around, and certainly not change that comes with ease. And we've been talking about these cardinal crosses over the course of the last year, at least, actually since 2012, and what they mean to us here on Earth. And it does mean that it is time for us to move out of some of these old patterns and for these new themes of development to begin. So, as this theme of development, of progress, of exploration, and us exploring and moving forward during this month of April, which is a month of new beginnings, it's the beginning of the astrological year. As this theme develops in each of our lives, we find the full moon that comes on April 15 to be starting a series of 4 total lunar eclipses, which are going to take place over the course of, I'm going to give you some of those dates later on, but this is the first of 4 total lunar eclipses that we're going to experience here in the United States, mostly on the East Coast, the East Coast of the States, and even down into South America. What I want to talk about first is the patterns that eclipses take. They typically, we will have the same eclipse every 19 years. And this lunar eclipse that we have coming up on April 15th is exactly the same eclipse, almost exactly as we had back in 1995, actually exactly April 15th. And I do have a picture of the eclipse that is occurring on April 15th of 2014. And I'm going to put that up right now. There it is. This is the lunar eclipse, the total lunar eclipse occurring on April 15th at 4:11 a.m. And as you can see where the blue arrow is pointing, that is the actual placement in the constellation of Libra, which you heard me talk about on last week's show, at 25 degrees of Libra. And now I'm going to show you a picture of a chart from 1995. And this is the lunar eclipse, April 15th of 1995. Do you see down in the right, the blue arrow pointing to the crescent at 25 degrees in the constellation of Libra? It is within minutes apart from being exactly the same lunar eclipse as we are having currently 19 years later, this month, April 15th of 2014. So what it marks is the patterns. If you think back to 1995, what was happening in your life in 1995, that was a pattern, that started then of experiencing your life emotionally in relationships. This is coming up again. The same eclipse is coming up again, and it is marking an ending and the beginning of a whole new cycle. And it is very much a process evolution that we're seeing here. So if you think back 19 years ago to April 15th of 1995 and what that 6 months ahead from that time looked like in your life by experience, it's going to be very similar in some ways, in many ways, this next 6 months moving ahead from April 15th forward 6 months. And so the full moons will bring to light lots sort of a growing structure of this new cycle, but with the wisdom of the path that your soul has been traveling all of this time. And what I did want to bring up is that from 0 to 19 years old is the first cycle of growth and evolution in anybody's life. That is a 19-year cycle. So whatever eclipse was either before or right after your birth, this cycle ends and a new one begins of evolution at 19 years old. And then from 19 to 38 years old is a second cycle of evolution. So the wisdom of your 19 years up forward another 19 years does mark a second cycle of evolvement of your soul. The moon is the builder of form, and it is the emotional stimulation of experience. And so it does, we sort of plant memories based on our experience, and whether they be wonderful experiences, whether they be difficult experiences, it just depends on the patterns that our soul carried into this life. So then the third cycle would be from age 38 to 57, and that's the next 19-year cycle of evolution and change and growth of the soul. So that would be just the first 3 cycles. Now, when we talk about eclipses, on a lunar eclipse, the Earth actually moves right between the sun and the moon. So the one coming up on April 15th is, we're going to have a total blockage of the light to the moon. So it is going to be dark. If you're up very early on April 15th, you will be able to see this total darkening, and then the light slowly beginning to return as the Earth moves out of that blocking the light of the sun onto the moon. Now, the sun carries the essence of life and binds the whole of creation together. So it's the spirit of life, and in astrology we refer to the sun as the spirit, the drive for essence. And when it is eclipsed, as you heard me say before, the light is blocked. So there's a renewal of spirit, and sort of a breakdown and a refining. So when the light is blocked on a solar eclipse, by the moon moving in between us and the sun, that happens on a new moon, there's this sort of darkening and wiping away of an old pattern, so that a new pattern can form and a new light ahead can be recognized. And now the moon, the energy that we refer to that the moon carries, since it is so close to us on her Earth, and its purpose is to reflect the spirit. So the moon carries the symbol of the law of matter, and when you have a lunar eclipse, there's this sort of breaking down of matter, so there can be this rebuilding of matter. So old programs are erased, and this happens twice a year, typically, that we have a set of eclipses. And so what it is an indication of is old programs being erased, endings, completions, initiations, and new beginnings, renewal of spirit and soul. And so I showed you the pictures of the lunar eclipse that occurred back in 1995, April of 1995, the same as the one we have coming up on April 15th. Now I want to show you, the next picture I have is a diagram showing you where the solar eclipse is going to be able to be seen. And this one is, there it is, the shaded area, the shaded red area, is the place where the annual solar eclipse can be seen, where the moon can be seen in front of the sun. So it's mostly in the southern parts of the world, like South America, down in that area. And that's the annular solar eclipse. And this one is occurring on April 29th in the constellation of Taurus. And you can see it with the green arrow pointing to it on the chart on the bottom. And it shows the sun, the moon, at 8 degrees in the constellation of Taurus. And along with Mercury, there's the symbol of Mercury right next to it. And this again is April 29th, 2014. Now, if we look at the next chart, and this is April 29th of, that should be 1995, but it looks like I might have the wrong chart there. But okay, so, well, I may have mixed that up, but 19 years prior to April 29th of 2014 was a annular solar eclipse, and that again was April 29th, 1995, and it was exactly the same degrees in the constellation of Taurus. And so you can see both of these eclipses, the lunar and the solar, exactly the same 19 years ago. So what began in your life in 1995? If you can recollect that, I'm sure you're probably going right about this time saying to yourself, wow, I've had these same experiences, very similar, 19 years ago, but I also want you to identify what's so different in your life right now than it was 19 years ago. Because there is a process, there has been a whole lot that has developed, a whole lot that you've experienced in between. And I'm sure it looks different now. You're a lot wiser. You've had this matter, this structure, this development, and this learning process that you have traveled. And so it's going to be quite a bit different. Talking about the solar eclipse, well, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the lunar eclipse to start, because that's the first one that's coming up, the April 15th one. And as you heard me say before, here on the East Coast in the United States, this is the first of a series of 4. And it is producing a midnight an eclipse which is going to be visible all up and down the coast. And they're calling this a tetrad, or a series of tetrahedron means 4. And it is starting a consecutive series of 4 total eclipses that are going to occur every 6 months. And they will be very, very significant toward our future, what develops. And there's a marker of 4 cycles. You know, this marker is a marker of 4 cycles which are building a form within us and around us. And it is a marker that we are taking a leap into a whole new cycle of opening and unfolding the age of Aquarius. And this total lunar eclipse on April 15th is going to be followed by a second total lunar eclipse on October 8th. The third will be April 4th of 2015, and the fourth will be September 28th of 2015. And total lunar eclipses are very emotional, and they tend to bring a focus into our body of consciousness, and they do stimulate deep emotion, and they reveal and they unreveal as they reveal and unreveal themselves. And you know what I'm finding in every reading that I do is everyone, and including myself, my family, my friends, everyone wants to know, how can I fix the imbalances in my relationships? How can I go in a direction that promises peace and harmony in my life? How can I get to that place? What knowledge do I need in order to achieve peaceful relationships? Where and how do I do that? Now, especially as we approach the end of this phase, with the light of, and by the end of the phase, I'm meaning the time between now and April 15th when this lunar eclipse occurs. This is really a beginning and an ending of a phase because of the eclipse. The eclipse, as you know, we head into the process of the eclipse actually occurring. You know, we're reaching the end of a phase, and with the light after the total lunar eclipse comes the awareness of what the future is going to hold. So now the solar eclipse on April 29th, this encourages us to look at our individual as well as collective identity and our relationship with nature and the materials that we use to sustain us. It is in the sign or the constellation of Taurus. Taurus is a very earthy sign, a very practical sign, a very stable sign, a very strong sign. It encourages us and reminds us of the value of spending time in nature. It reminds us of the resources we have and how we have succeeded or not succeeded in the world of materials up till now. It stimulates memories from past experiences that surround money and finances. This solar eclipse is occurring in what we call with a south node, which is stimulating the past to surface and for us to remember experiences from the past. And it does remind us, because it is in the sign of financial worth and emotional worth. It reminds us of our individual value systems and where they come from and why we hold on to them. Remember, this is a marker of what the next 6 months is going to unfold. So it's painting a theme, and it reminds us of our old patterns of behavior and how they have supported our success in the world of material or not. This eclipse reminds us of where there is a possibility to learn and grow by recognizing stubborn old patterns that we may have been stuck in. It brings to the forefront where our fears may be of change and why. So fears that come up about making change. Oh my gosh, what if I do this? What if I change this? Then this could happen. And so there's that memory piece, or that remembering about the old patterns. And the energy of Taurus does remind us that there are new resources available to create from, and that anything new we create will be beautiful. Taurus is one of the signs that carries a lot of beauty, a lot of passion with it. And it reminds us that we should move slow with a concentration on building new resources which come from a place of love. This Taurus eclipse will stimulate a concentration on money and how we make it and how we spend it. It'll bring to the forefront for us, for all of us, an examination of our financial systems on a personal level and on a collective level. It'll bring to our awareness our individual sense of worthiness and a collective sense of worthiness. And if you're one of the people that was born around the end of any month and the beginning of any month, you'll feel the influences of this eclipse the most. And it means that change is upon us. It means that you are entering into a changing period. And as with any eclipses that begin to manifest, they say, okay, we are in a crisis of change right now. Let's sort of take note of what this theme is going to be about. And that's what I'm expressing right now, is all these different influences that come with Taurus. So you'll feel the influences of this eclipse the most if you were born at the end of January or the beginning of February, at the end of April or the beginning of May, the end of July or the beginning of August, the end of October or the beginning of November. If you were born during these times, it means that you are a very strong-willed person and you have a tendency to become very set in your ways. So what this eclipse does is stimulate an awareness of the beauty that is connected with this time of change, and that it can be in of itself very valuable. So a solar eclipse in Taurus signifies a universal readiness, and once again, it's a time where we can further develop healthy relationships with the nature of the world around us. And as you saw when we looked at the chart, we saw Mercury. The planet Mercury was aligned with the solar eclipse. So what that tells us is that it's a signal that whatever we don't understand, we can develop further by taking some time to examine and concentrate and discuss and gather information. Any knowledge that we gain through this period of this eclipse that is around the month of May is going to be really strong in setting that theme of what's to change in our lives. It's going to be a very valuable time. So just sort of pay extra attention. And some of the things that I was reading something this morning, because I do follow Sandra Ingerman. She's the lineage of the shamanic practices that I have, and the education comes from her. And she made a recommendation by an article that she wrote, and she said that that if you can make it a regular practice of either doing a shamanic journey, if you have that education, or a meditation, as often as possible, to fully absorb into your cells the love that went into your creation from every, and she means, what she's saying is that Taurus carries a strong, stable sense that there is a lot of love that we have around us, and that if we proceed forward with that sense of creation around us, that it's going to be very, very positive and very beautiful in our lives ahead. And what she's recommending is this: if you know how to journey, if you know how to meditate, take that journey into your beginnings and the love of that seed that marked the beginning of your creation, and just sort of sit there and experience in every part of yourself what it means to be a part of that beautiful light of creation. And it will, it will definitely produce and stimulate a bright light inside you, and an understanding of where you come from. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention as we move into this time of great change with these eclipses. And of course, the United States is feeling the effects of this lunar eclipse coming up in April very, very much. And these next 3 will be very powerful in stimulating a lot of change in the United States, and definitely a very active time where we're experiencing a lot of breakdown of old structures and concentration on how we can better create our future. So I do want to say thank you so much for watching Turn to the Stars, and also remind you that if you have questions about your personal astrology and what your future looks like as far as the planetary influences, turn to the stars and you'll find your answers there. And so I hope you have a great week, and until the next time, take good care. I'll see you then.